Bienvenidos y buenos días, welcome and good morning. Before we begin the official presentation, I'd like to let everyone know that we're offering Spanish and American Sign Language interpretation during today's meeting. I'll read the instructions for joining the Spanish interpretation channel in English, and then one of our two Spanish interpreters will read them in Spanish. Simultaneous interpretation is being provided. English speakers may need to select English as their language. If accessing Zoom from a computer, click the globe icon located at the bottom of the screen and choose English. If accessing Zoom from a smartphone, click the three dots above where it says More on the bottom right side of the screen, choose Language Interpretation, choose English, and press Done on the top right side of the screen.
Hola, bienvenidos. Antes de comenzar la presentación, vamos a dar unas pautas de acceso para el lenguaje, para la interpretación simultánea. Estamos ofreciendo español de manera simultánea y vamos a dar las instrucciones para que ingrese al canal. Si nos acompaña a través de la computadora, le pedimos que vaya a la parte inferior de su pantalla en cuanto accionen el canal. Usted verá un globo terráqueo y seleccione español. Muchas veces puede encontrarlo a través de los tres puntos o la palabra more si sus configuraciones son en inglés. Si nos acompaña a través de un teléfono inteligente, busque los tres puntos donde dice more o más y apriete al desglosar la lista. Dice Language Interpretation o lenguaje de interpretación, elija español y presione Done para poder activar la acción. Gracias.
Next slide, please. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Leilani Viramontes, and I am an air pollution specialist at CARB. I am joined by several of my colleagues today to help facilitate this work group and present on various topics and to answer your questions. We welcome you to our first funding plan work group for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 for the clean mobility investments, which are formally referred to in the state budgetary process as the Sustainable Community-Based Transportation Equity Projects. The funding plan for clean transportation incentives serves as the annual blueprint for expending the clean transportation incentive funds appropriated to CARB in the state budget. The funding plan establishes CARB's priorities for the funding cycle, describes the projects CARB intends to fund, and sets funding targets and outreach strategies for each project. Each year, the funding plan is updated and includes funding proposals and implementation details specific to each fiscal year. Next slide, please. Today's agenda began with an introduction of our first funding plan work group. Next up, we'll move on to a background of CARB's light-duty vehicle purchase incentive projects and the Sustainable Community-Based Transportation Equity Projects, again, which are also known as the Clean Mobility Investments. We'll then shift our focus to an overview, successes, and lessons learned for the mobility projects. We'll then take a short break that will be followed by a conversation on future proposed budget and allocations, and an overview of the long-term strategy. We'll then close with next steps, which will cover topics that will be presented in our future working group. Please note there will be a dedicated Q&A portion after most agenda items, and then a general open Q&A at the end of the work group. Next slide, please. Our individual and community mobility incentives help CARB make progress on our institutional goals and help aid California communities. Overall, these investments strive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and criteria pollutants to improve air quality and public health, create an environment that accelerates zero-emission vehicle deployment to transform the state's fleet to clean vehicles, prioritize funding projects within priority population areas to address socioeconomic disparities, in particular through funding community-identified solutions that help improve access to key destinations and increase the number of mobility options available to communities. And lastly, these investments strive to alleviate environmental harms that are disproportionately felt by some communities due to historical inequities. State-level directives, including Assembly Bill 617, Senate Bill 375, and Senate Bill 350, are a few of the drivers behind these goals as they focus on improvements to environmental health. As an agency, CARB incorporates the equity principles of these directives into the fabric and design of every project and program. Next slide, please. This figure outlines the various projects that fall under the vehicle purchase incentives and the clean mobility investments. The vehicle purchase incentives, shown on the left, such as Regional Clean Cars for All and the California E-Bike Incentive Project, will be discussed at a separate workgroup meeting. And today's workgroup will be providing updates on regional and statewide clean mobility options, the Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, clean mobility in schools, and planning and capacity building. Regional Clean Mobility Options, or CMO, were the initial pilots that provided shared mobility services. Statewide CMO was created following the pilots, which provides funds for small-scale shared mobility projects. The Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, or STEP, funds complementary investments to expand mobility choices and reduce vehicle miles traveled in response to community-identified priorities that may include transit, active transportation infrastructure, workforce development, and other activities. Clean Mobility in Schools supports clean transportation, air quality improvement, and education projects at K-12 public schools. Lastly, planning and capacity building are community-led planning projects that include dedicated, localized technical assistance. Next slide, please. We will now provide an overview and dive into successes and lessons learned for each of the clean mobility investments projects. I will pass it over to my colleague, John Massetti, to kick things off. Next slide, please.
Hello. It's important to clarify that we refer to CMO, that these are two types of projects that coincide with two phases of CMO implementation. The first phase comprised the Regional Clean Mobility pilot projects, which consisted of 7 initial pilots overseen by CARB. These pilots have helped CARB gain valuable insights into the clean mobility landscape and refine strategies for solicitation, selecting, and implementing these kinds of investments. Following these initial pilots, CARB transitioned to the CMO program to its current form, the statewide Clean Mobility Options Voucher Pilot Program. The Voucher Pilot Program offered vouchers that fund one or more shared mobility services as well as community transportation needs assessments. CalSTART administers the program statewide in collaboration with other partners. Lastly, the CMO administrator team also facilitates the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance, CMEA, a peer-to-peer network that helps clean mobility project implementers and communities share lessons learned and support one another. It is important to note that CMEA is open to project implementers beyond CMO and invites all interested project implementers from PCB, CMIS, STEP, and other mobility projects. A more in-depth CMEA overview will be provided in future work groups. Next slide. Since fiscal year 2014-15, $23.9 million in project funds has been allocated to the regional clean mobility pilots and funded various types of projects such as zero emission car sharing, van pools, ride-hailing services, shuttles, bicycles, and scooter sharing, transit passes, outreach and education, trip planning, infrastructure, and maintenance. 5 of the 7 regional pilots have completed. 2 of the regional pilots, Blue LA or LA City Car Sharing Pilot Project and Our Community Car Share Sacramento Pilot Project, have operations that are being retailored for continued service as CARB's involvement comes to a close. In the next 2 slides, we will discuss the regional clean mobility pilot successes. Next slide, please. To help measure the success of the regional clean mobility pilots, along with CMO and STEP, CARB contracted the University of California, Berkeley's Transportation Sustainability Research Center to study these programs and their impacts on communities. The study found that Sacramento's Our Community Car Share successfully implemented an affordable and flexible service. User surveys reported an 88% faster travel time and 67% extended travel range due to the car sharing service. The study also found the City of LA's Blue LA car share program successfully lowered transportation costs for users. Roughly 4% of users got rid of a personal vehicle, 30% suppressed a purchase of a personal vehicle, and 10% reduced their personal driving due to a Blue LA vehicle. Next slide, please. Car sharing in the regional pilots has had a positive impact on people's daily lives and their well-being. Using surveys, CARB assessed if the regional pilots improved priority populations' access to goods and services such as grocery shopping, medical appointments, and other important errands or social visits. The UC Berkeley study mentioned earlier analyzed these surveys and found that yes, Sacramento's Our Community Car Share had improved access. Access increased by 75% to schools, by 71% to grocery shopping, and by 69% to healthcare. In the next slide, we will discuss the challenges and lessons learned during the implementation of these regional pilots. Next slide. The regional projects offered many challenges and lessons learned. One challenge was that car share operators often struggled to generate revenue to cover capital and operating costs. In the absence of future grant funding to pay for annual operational costs and to subsidize hourly rates for low-income users, car share programs must explore new funding models. This may also require experimenting with the siting of vehicles and chargers in different locations that expand access while limiting the risk for vandalism and property damage. One explored solution for Our Community Car Share was to maintain a reduced subsidized hourly rate for program members while trying to generate adequate revenue to cover operational costs for market rate customers. On the next slide, we will discuss community feedback about the regional pilots. A critical component of the regional projects was to listen to community feedback. Feedback from the community came from surveys, focus groups, user testimonials, and local resident site-level teams. Sacramento's Our Community Car Share found that most members who responded to a post-trip survey answered that they would not have been able to make a trip if an Our Community Car Share vehicle was not available. Project surveys reported that the majority of members, more than 60%, used Our Community Car Share services to access groceries and household goods, and 35% of those members did not have access to a vehicle prior to Our Community Car Share. Our community car share is serving a critical need, and members want transportation services to be maintained. This concludes our discussion of the Regional Clean Mobility Pilots as the program transitioned to the statewide Clean Mobility Options Voucher Pilot Program, discussed by Ava in the next few slides. Next.
Good morning, everyone. This is Ava Yakubirad, Air Resources Engineer at CARB. This slide provides an overview of the Clean Mobility Options, or CMO, statewide voucher pilot program, which has 64.2 million project funds allocated to date for mobility project vouchers. A portion of these funds also come from California Energy Commission. Clean Mobility Options has also previously funded community transportation needs assessments, but these kind of vouchers will be captured in the planning and capacity building overview. CMO funds many project types similar to the regional pilot, such as zero emission car share, on-demand shuttles using electric vans and buses, ride-on-demand services, school buses, electric and regular bicycle and scooter sharing, and carpool and vanpools. CMO also has funded 38 mobility projects, of which 21 have launched and are in active implementation status in their communities. Some projects that have recently launched include the city of Riverside. They launched their hydrogen fuel cell car share program, and the Energy Coalition launched their electric car share program in South El Monte. The statewide CMO program is administered by a group of dedicated and knowledgeable people who are working hard to make sure that the program operates consistently with its intended goals, and to support each project to ensure they are on track to implement successfully and achieve their promises to their communities. Our administrator team consists of CalSTART and their partners, the Shared Use Mobility Center, Emergent Labs, and Hardquist Strategies. Since 2019, this team has provided support and technical assistance for all applicants at the time of application window to executing their agreement, and now they are mostly focused on project implementation support, which involves working with each project team individually from project kickoff to full operation, developing tools, resources, and trainings based on project needs within their geographic and operational context to implement successful projects along with administrative support, offering insight on budgeting and invoicing, and help them navigate program reporting and evaluation requirements. What we are seeing is strong evidence that CMO projects are increasing mobility and accessibility in the communities they serve. For example, in the first 17 months, Reading Bike Share program served over 2,600 unique users, with each user taking an average of 5.57 trips, showing the strong uptake and repeat use. In Chula Vista, since 2022, the free electric shuttle program has been providing door-to-door service for passengers with physical disabilities, in addition to passengers that do not have disabilities, offering an essential mobility lifeline. As of May of 2023, this program has provided over 29,000 trips for more than 275 users, many of whom rely on it regularly. These examples show how CMO is filling existing transportation gaps and directly improving access to key destinations for residents. Now, we would like to highlight some of the broader community benefits of the Clean Mobility Options program beyond just transportation. These investments are helping to address food access challenges by providing mobility options for residents living in food deserts area, where it's difficult to access affordable, healthy grocery stores. Surveys show that 32% of trips are for grocery shopping and running errands, which demonstrate how these services are directly supporting daily needs like food access. In addition to mobility and access, the program is also supporting local jobs. As of 2024, these investments have helped create 120 new jobs, contributing to local economic opportunities in the communities served. Here we see user data collected from 12 operational projects as of December 2024, covering electric car share, microtransit, and bike share services, collected through surveys, telematics, and operational data. This data helps us better understand who is using these services and the benefits that they are providing. Looking first at vehicle access and income, we see clear differences across service types. For example, microtransit users stand out as having the highest rates of users without access to private car, about 51%, making this a critical service for people who might otherwise have no reliable transportation. And in terms of usage and environmental impact, these services delivered the highest number of trips, over 226,000 trips. Microtransit projects are expected to improve in emission reductions once charging infrastructure comes online and more fully electric vehicles launch. It's also important to note that bike share users report an average household income of $35,000, which is significantly lower than what we typically see in traditional car share program, where users often have higher incomes. This tells us bike shares are reaching lower income users who may not be served by other mobility options. Together, these data points show how services are reaching different user groups with varying needs and how each service type plays a role in providing clean, accessible transportation option. Now, challenges and some lessons learned. We've seen several common challenges across projects that impact timelines and sustainability. Delays in vehicle procurement remain as a major barrier, especially with supply chain issues. To keep projects moving, some projects have taken flexible approaches, like launching with a partial fleet or purchasing used vehicles when new ones aren't available. On the infrastructure side, slow permitting and unexpected site costs have stalled charging deployment. Early engagement with permitting agencies and through site assessments are proving critical. High insurance premiums are another hurdle, especially for smaller or community-based operators. There is growing need for more flexible insurance requirements, and we are supporting efforts to develop cooperative insurance models. Overall, these challenges highlight the need for continued financial support and a strong focus on long-term sustainability to help these projects not only launch but thrive. Additional challenges include theft and vandalism, especially for bike share projects. Some of these projects are budgeting for extra bikes, and some are shifting to bike library models, allowing long-term loans to reduce theft and improve public perception. Long project timelines often lead to staff changes, causing loss of knowledge. The administrative teams helps onboard new team members quickly to maintain continuity. Projects also face instability with partners and limited local mobility operators. The industry is still emerging, so team changes and company closures are common. We are encouraging community co-ownership models and contingency planning, and we've launched a mobility directory to connect teams with available local providers. Rural and tribal communities still face barriers like long distances, limited infrastructure, and digital access issues. Success depends on culturally relevant, tailored strategies that build trust and access. Next slide, please. I think I went over this slide, sorry. Next slide. Before we move on, we would like to share a short video highlighting the launch of a Good to Go bike share project in Rancho San Pedro. This is a great example of how these projects are not only providing clean transportation, but also meeting people's everyday needs and improving quality of life for low-income residents. Enjoy the video.
We're a private business that was founded as a nonprofit, years ago, and so we've always had this sort of bicycling advocacy and street safety, and just accessibility for pedestrians, bicyclists, and people who are choosing to use alternative forms of transportation.
I love to use bikes. Since I don't know how to drive, basically that's my car, It allows me to do my exercise. I have to go to do my errands, plus go to the grocery store. I don't have to pay for gas, and it's cheap, and it's eco-friendly,
Residents of Rancho San Pedro are able to download an application and use that application to rent a fleet of 20 e-bikes and multiple e-cargo bikes as well.
To rent the bike, if you don't have a helmet, they will provide you one. You have to pay 50 cents for an hour. But if you want like a subscription, you're gonna pay only $20 a month.
We haven't had to worry about some of the intricacies of compliance and the intricacies of just how to go about starting up this program. We're able to provide this service, at an affordable cost in a place where it's not already being provided in one way or another. So I hope that just having it available for people, being able to bake it into their normal everyday routines and those kinds of things would really be how we would like to see it.
Thank you all for watching. I will now pass it along to my colleague Violet Martin to discuss planning and capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. Good morning, everyone. I'm Violet Martin. So let's start with a quick overview of the planning and capacity building category, often referred to simply as planning. To date, $14.5 million has been allocated to planning projects, and this includes $1.7 million from Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, or STEP, planning grants, and $2.2 million from CMO transportation needs assessments. Originally, STEP and Clean Mobility Options offered separate planning grants, but beginning with the most recent funding round, these efforts were consolidated into one category, planning and capacity building. That's why you'll see both programs represented here. So planning plays a critical role in our clean mobility investments. It supports communities by improving local understanding of transportation needs, building local and organizational capacity, preparing communities to develop and implement clean transportation solutions that address real transportation gaps. So far, we have 7 active planning grants that are underway and 8 completed STEP planning grants. There's also 36 needs assessments funded through Clean Mobility Options, and 30 of which are now complete. Next slide, please. Planning and capacity building is supported by a statewide administrator team led by Data for Social Good in partnership with Momentum and the Institute for Sustainable Communities. This team administers the 7 active planning grants, provides implementation support to those grantees, and supports STEP and SEMA projects, that's Clean Mobility and School projects, that were selected through the joint solicitation. Next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, planning grants were originally part of the STEP and CMO project, but we made a deliberate decision to create a separate category. Why? Because planning projects take significant time and require dedicated support and focused resources. This shift helps us better support early stage community-led planning, especially in under-resourced areas that need help strengthening their foundation and getting ready to pursue larger funding opportunities. And we're seeing the impact. So grantees have told us that planning grants are doing just that, further justifying establishing this distinct category to sustain and expand that progress. For example, City Heights and Omnitrans both started with planning grants and later secured full STEP implementation grants. Others developed valuable skills in mobility planning and project development that prepared them for next steps. A major takeaway is stronger partnerships lead to stronger outcomes. Circle of Life used their planning grant to deepen collaboration with the city of Bakersfield, which led to a successful Transformative Climate Communities grant. We also saw thoughtful community engagement. Isla Vista developed intentional strategies to engage Spanish-speaking community members, seniors, and low-income households. The result, a comprehensive and actionable mobility plan grounded in community input and technical analysis. These projects show that planning doesn't just prepare communities, it lays the groundwork for lasting community-driven change. Next slide, please. When under-resourced communities receive effective capacity building support, they're better equipped to compete independently for future funding and implement projects that reflect their priorities. This early investment helps shift the power to the community where it belongs. We've also seen the value in making cross-sector connections in transportation planning, linking projects to climate adaptation, workforce development, and anti-displacement strategies. These connections help build greater trust and encourage more meaningful participation. Just as important is who we include in the planning process. Seniors, the unhoused, single mothers, people often left out of traditional planning have a voice in these projects. When we actively include those most impacted, we create pathways to empowerment and better outcomes for everyone. Next slide, please. Of course, challenges have emerged. One of the biggest is data collection and analysis. Many community-based organizations face barriers in this area, whether due to limited staff capacity, lack of tools, or the complexity of evaluation methods. This is one reason CARB has partnered with an administrator team that brings strong data collection expertise to the table. This partnership helps ensure that communities can track outcomes and learn from their work without being overwhelmed. We also learned that real-world conditions often require changes, whether it's shifting timelines, adjusting project scope, or responding to new information. That's why flexibility is essential. The ability to adapt is key to a project's long-term success. In addition, technical assistance plays a big role in keeping projects moving forward. It helps coordinate community action and opens the door to collaborative opportunities that might not otherwise emerge. And beyond funding, grantees need dedicated tools and resources to help them manage the administrative side of things. Reducing that burden allows organizations to stay focused on delivering impact, not just managing paperwork. Next slide, please. All of these lessons about capacity building, flexibility, partnerships, and reducing administrative burden are shaping our next steps. We're excited to share that a new planning request for applications, or RFA, is on the way to support even more community-led efforts. Here's what to expect. 7.3 million will be available to support at least 15 projects, with up to 500,000 available per project. We're also offering application support to help reduce barriers to participation, and we're encouraging interested communities to fill out our interest survey, which helps us better understand the needs and prepare resources accordingly. We're also actively seeking input from the public and tribal governments as we finalize the draft requirements to make sure the process is inclusive and responsive. This RFA is a great opportunity for new communities to begin their planning journey, and we're here to support them every step of the way. And with that, I'll hand it over to Laura, who will share how STEP has led to real-world implementation successes. Thank you.
Thanks, Violet. The Sustainable Transportation Equity Project, or STEP, funds coordinated community-led projects in historically underserved areas that address local transportation needs and increase access to key destinations while reducing vehicle miles traveled. Each STEP grant includes multiple project types within one priority community that work together to make it easier for people to get around without owning a car. This place-based investment approach encourages growing and building new connections between existing transportation networks. STEP funds a variety of clean transportation and supporting projects, such as public transit and shared mobility services, pedestrian and bike infrastructure, land use planning and housing policy, workforce development, and clean transportation planning and education. To date, STEP has allocated $77.9 million across 11 implementation grants, and the map on this slide shows the locations and the amounts of these grants. On the next few slides, I will highlight 3 successful STEP grants. This STEP grant is in West Oakland, a neighborhood with a history of both disinvestment and harmful investments, such as the freeways that cut it off from downtown, which have burdened the community with air pollution and limited transportation options. With STEP's flexible funding, project partners built on years of community engagement to fund solutions identified by West Oaklanders, like sidewalk repairs, urban greening, youth bike building workshops, truck management, and transit. These projects holistically tackle vehicle miles traveled, greenhouse gases, and criteria air pollutants while making it easier to get around. Partnership this STEP grant has fostered between the city and community groups, including the West Oakland Environmental Indicators Project, has generated creative, lasting solutions to entrenched bureaucratic barriers. Oakland City staff has indicated that the tree planting they are aiming for in the STEP grant is at a scale much greater than is normally done but within reach because they hired an arborist to support city tree services and because of the capacity of community partners to work with residents directly. Here you can see a map of priority sidewalk repair and tree planting locations identified by synthesizing community knowledge of the neighborhood with quantitative data. The funding of active transportation infrastructure is a feature of STEP, as is the flexibility of the funding to address multiple related community challenges. Next slide, please. The Next Step project highlight is in the City Heights neighborhood of San Diego, a community torn apart by State Route 15 in the 1980s. City Heights has a long history of welcoming refugees and immigrants, making it a linguistically and culturally rich community. However, the neighborhood has been experiencing rapid gentrification and is a traffic violence hotspot, as highlighted in recent reports on San Diego's high injury network. The State Route 15 Sustainable Redevelopment Project builds on a STEP planning grant that the City Heights Community Development Corporation used to produce their Development Without Displacement report in collaboration with the Transportation Equity and Affordable Housing Task Force, a community advisory group that will continue meeting and guiding the new STEP implementation grant. This grant exemplifies STEP's neighborhood-scale coordinated investment approach. The project components work together to build safe and comfortable connections between 4 new affordable housing projects, active transportation infrastructure, and 2 underutilized transit plazas, all within a 3-block radius. Project will include a new pedestrian alley directly connecting an affordable housing project to a bike lane and transit plaza. Other project components include supportive infrastructure for 2 new bike lanes being constructed by San Diego Association of Governments. Finally, landscaping, lighting, and quick build infrastructure to be designed in collaboration with residents will improve sidewalks, pedestrian crossings, and bike lanes to make it safer and more pleasant to get around without a car. With a community-based organization as the lead grantee, this grant also exemplifies how, in the words of City Heights CDC Director of Urban Planning, Jesse Ramirez, STEP empowers grassroots community-based organizations to be in a different position when speaking to local government. Next slide, please. One final success to highlight, the Stockton Mobility Collective grant was among the original cohort of grantees and was completed in 2025. The project reduced 1,870 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent and 3.4 million vehicle miles traveled via community electric car and bike share programs in South Stockton. It featured a workforce development component in which paid fellows supported the bike and car share programs. 6 of the 8 fellows were subsequently offered long-term positions. The lead grantee, San Joaquin Council of Governments, was presented with the Eureka Award by the California Association of Councils of Government in 2025. This award aims to recognize the creative leadership and thinking needed to develop and implement new ideas that can serve as examples or best practices for others to follow. Next slide, please. So here we'll show a short video highlighting the workforce development component of the Stockton Mobility Collective grant.
The Stockton Mobility Collective is a transformative project by the San Joaquin Council of Governments to provide affordable, sustainable transportation options for people in underserved neighborhoods. The collective includes an affordable electric car sharing program called Mio Car, electric pedal assist bicycle services called Bike Stockton, an enhanced Vamos Easy Hub app for planning and paying for transit trips in San Joaquin County and beyond, transit and mobility incentives, and a workforce development program.
This program has literally changed the course of my future because I'm getting more opportunities through the program. The best job about the job training program was just getting out there and getting the hands-on experience that I needed, and it was a great confidence builder also. I was unemployed, but I just barely signed the offer sheet with the workforce development program.
We came up with this project to respond to the need for more
Next, I'll highlight some challenges experienced implementing STEP and actions we've taken to improve the project based on lessons learned. To make the application process smoother, STEP introduced a two-phase application process, starting with a low barrier concept phase, followed by a full phase application for applicants who were selected from the initial concept phase. STEP also provided third-party technical assistance to help navigate the application process. STEP staff offered debriefs with all applicants, as well as third-party technical assistance for unawarded applicants to continue developing their project concepts and identify other funding options. Diverse and sometimes challenging local government contracting processes have led STEP to coordinate closely with grantees, starting in the pre-grant phase to identify contracting timelines and requirements so they don't delay grant implementation. STEP also standardized and streamlined administrative processes to allow grantees to focus their efforts on implementation, including introducing an information hub that grantees can access with helpful guides and templates. Next slide, please. Some STEP grantees have experienced implementation challenges, including with vehicle procurement, vandalism, and data collection. CARB engages closely on an ongoing basis with grantees to support and to collaborate on finding workable solutions. We have heard that this flexibility and support is valuable to grantees as they undertake efforts that are new to their communities. Staff are also working to produce templates and guidance based on other grantees' experiences. STEP has contracted with researchers to address common challenges faced by grantees. CARB contracted with STEER to develop a report on sustainable financing tools and strategies for equitable, community-based mobility and transportation solutions. The STEER report addresses financial sustainability challenges, providing guidance on options for ongoing funding after grants end, and highlights the value of building institutional connections. A second contract addresses the incomplete capture of project benefits by improving quantification of the benefits of STEP's coordinated investment approach. That concludes the presentation on the STEP project, and I will now hand it off to Abraham to discuss clean mobility in schools. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So I will be talking about clean mobility in schools, or CMIS. Grants funded under this program coordinated community-led investments that address school-related transportation needs and increase access to zero-emission technology, equipment, and education. To date, Clean Mobility in Schools has awarded $62.1 million to 8 unique school communities that will achieve an estimated 25,500 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gas reductions. The map on the screen shows the location and general amounts of these grants. Grants under this program have funded clean mobility projects like zero-emission school buses, a variety of charging infrastructure and charging solutions, energy projects like solar canopies, and active modes of transportation such as bicycling and walking. Today, I'll be focusing on aspects of workforce training and education, some successes from recently finished projects. I'll provide a few examples of projects on the horizon and share some lessons learned from our grantees. Next slide, please. California school districts are increasingly adopting clean technologies backed by workforce training initiatives and student engagement programs. So as the popularity of zero-emission technology grows, workforce developments such as driver and zero-emission vehicle technician trainings have been key components to bridging the gap between education and industry. For example, many districts were initially skeptical of battery electric systems, so trainings in this area focused on basic safety, aka Electricity 101. They addressed common concerns and covered regenerative braking and new dashboard features. Another example is landscape teams in one of our grantees, or for one of our grantees, were trained on zero emission maintenance equipment like mean green mowers, learning about their quiet and efficient operation, even how to adjust the speed settings for safety. Student-led programs have also played a pivotal role in driving community impact. In Stockton, the Energy Patrol empowered students to champion energy-saving habits, while at Lincoln High School in San Diego, the e-bike lending library combined bicycle access with safety training, helping students develop a sense of responsibility and ownership. Next slide, please. So there are over 10,000 schools throughout California that could adopt similar clean technologies and practices. And one of the successes of clean mobility in schools is that grantees have an unprecedented opportunity to put zero emission and clean technologies on display for students, teachers, families, and the community. Case in point, there's an 80-foot mural shown on this slide, created by Pulitzer Award-winning artist Lalo Alcaraz, showcasing the Future is Emissions-Free campaign for El Monte Union High School District, on display right next to the Pomona Freeway, which is used by 300,000 cars every day. The press event brought state and local government officials, school leaders, student staff, and parents together to learn and celebrate exciting art installations. This is just another highlight of how, through clean mobility in schools, students are exposed to career options through the on-site tours, hands-on demonstrations, and speaking engagements. Next slide, please. Some successes on the horizon. The newer grantees are building on insight from planning and community-led projects, introducing initiatives such as bike mechanic training and apprenticeships, on-ground transits and ambassador programs, enhancing crossing guard training, and partnerships with student education pathways that are focused on energy and environmental sustainability. In East San Jose, upcoming initiatives include traffic gardens, which are miniature child-scale traffic towns that offer a safe environment for children to learn the rules of the road, along with safe routes to schools and event activities, all designed to equip communities with the skills needed to travel safely to and from school and work. Next slide, please. Some of the lessons learned. CMIS grantees have partners have faced challenges, especially with electric vehicle procurement and deployment. Their advice is start small, test new technology early, and make sure that communication systems work right from the start. Grantees also stress the importance of early training for a range of users, as early engagement facilitates the adoption of clean mobility technologies, enhances safety, and fosters a sense of ownership. Strong collaboration among partners leads to better understanding and a more successful project. And finally, do not underestimate the impact of students and parent advocates. Identify those champions and give them a platform to make a real difference. Next slide, please. CMIS grants helps students connect zero-emission technology, transportation, and learning in a meaningful way. So let's watch this video from Stockton Unified School District's Earth Day from this past April that brings this whole idea to life.
SUSD celebrates Earth Day and celebrates clean air all year round. Let's take a look at what's going on.
Today's a significant day where Stockton Unified is starting our Earth Day. And the idea of this is to mesh our community with school together as looking at the entire child.
When I think of the people that are here, it's such a great group of stakeholders. We have everything from our Congressman Harder here.
We're just excited to hold events like this.
To our board members.
Here we're going to tape the sides.
To our community leaders, our parents and students here. It really does take all of us to help support the whole child here at Stockton Unified.
It's so exciting to be here at Stockton Unified for Earth Day. We know how important it is to have an incredible relationship with our air, our water, our soil here in the Central Valley, because we produce the nation's food. That's who we are. We're a group of farmers. And so it's so exciting to see the next generation of leaders that Stockton Unified is training and educating to go out and make sure that our Our environment continues to be passed down generation on generation.
I'm excited about the exposure our youth here is getting and hands-on, but also too, it's exciting to see those who are in charge of these different projects and resources here and visible to the community. I love coming out and doing these events for our community. I think it brings everyone together and just really highlights the work that we're doing to clean the air for our students in Stockton Unified.
This right here is the on and off switch.
Something that always warmed my heart, which is why I'm in the schools every day, is being with our students. Our students are our why. Our students are the reason why we're doing all the work that we're doing. And so whether it's from our preschool students up to our 22-year-old special education students, we want to do what's best for them, which means do what's best for them, their families, and the community they live in.
SUSD is doing its part, but it has goals to become more environmental friendly within the next 2 years. I'm Melinda Meza with the Stockton Unified School District. SUSD.
Okay, I will now pass it over to Robert to facilitate Q&A.
Good morning, folks. My name is Robert Chester, and I'm staff here at CARB. I will facilitate comments and questions this morning. We're going to open the floor for everyone to ask questions about material we've covered thus far. Keep in mind, we will have another Q&A session at the end, but this should be focused on the material we've covered thus far. If you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those of you using Zoom online, please click on the Raise Hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under Participants tab. If you're using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions options on the Zoom navigation bar and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. If you would like to provide a written comment or question via email, you may email us at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. Okay, so we are now open for questions and comments, so please raise your hand if you would like to provide a comment or ask a question. Do we have any emails? Oh, hold on. Okay. Christian Corby, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead and unmute yourself. And please, I did forget to say, make sure you announce your affiliation if you have one. Go ahead, Christian.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Christian Corby, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director at the California Electric Transportation Coalition. I apologize if there's some background noise here. This is the only place I could find to work today. I wanted to just make a supportive comment on the micro mobility solutions that were provided under the statewide CMO overview. Really impressive numbers there on how many participants were using it and the number of trips and the clean miles traveled. I just really impressed by that data. So wanted to say thank you for sharing that and would support CARB to continue to pursue those programs because my goodness, it looks like they really are successful. So thank you and appreciate all the other great information you've been providing today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christian. So we do not have any emails at this time. I see no raised hands. Let's wait a moment. Oh, there we go. Okay. Claudia Cruz, I am unmuting you. Please go ahead and unmute yourself and make your comment or ask your question.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I was just interested if you can just, or where we might be able to get more information regarding the opportunities that are up coming for future projects. There was a mention of some funding that might be available. I know that there was a survey link, but is there more information that can be provided regarding that?
You're talking about the planning?
Yes.
Violet?
Yeah, I'm happy to share a link to where we will post materials once they become available. Our approach will be to post some initial draft guidelines and criteria so that we can get some feedback on our approach and make sure that what we're proposing is accessible and will work for communities and meet community needs. And so that's our first step. So there will be, those materials will be posted in the near future. I would suggest going to the website to check, also getting on our listserv so that you'll be notified once those materials are posted. And I'm also welcome, or you're also welcome to email us your information so that we can add you to those email lists and notify you of those things that are up and coming. I'm not sure if we already put the planning capacity building link in the chat, so I'll go ahead and add that now. This link will also have the survey. So if you are interested, I do encourage you to complete the survey. It's also an opportunity to maybe mention some of the technical assistance needs you may have if you're interested in applying, or if you're just, wanting to spread the word. That's also encouraged. Does that answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll take a look at the survey. The link was provided. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Violet. Again, just to remind you, please identify any affiliation that you have. I apologize, I did not mention that at the beginning. So, okay, Piet, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Piet Karen with Ecology Action, and I really appreciate all the data that you're sharing out and program successes and lessons learned. And so I had two questions / comments. The first one was regarding some of the data that was shown in terms of overall program participation. You showed a chart that had number of e-bike users, car share users and transit users, and some data on that. Is CARB able to make more of that information available, just in terms of breaking down, like how many car share programs does that represent, how many bike share programs it represents? Is that data that's going to be available?
Hi, Piet. I can take that question. Thank you. Yes, these data were mostly came from our mobility project voucher first year of the report, of evaluation report of these mobility projects. I believe there were only 12 projects that were operational during that evaluation report. So these reports will be posted on Clean Mobility Options website very soon, in just a few weeks, and you can access the full report.
Great, thank you. And then that's one more follow-up question. Because Ecology Action with other CBOs and public agencies are working on a CMS grant in Watsonville, and we're having some challenges with e-bike share. So I just wondering, in terms of like the Stockton program, if there's more information available about that e-bike share program, through documents or other sources. So that's my follow-up question. Thank you.
Laura, maybe you can provide more information on the Stockton Bike Share project.
Thanks, Ava. I think Pedro Peterson is also on, and he's going to take that question, I believe.
Pedro, I've unmuted you. You want to try again?
Hi, yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can you repeat the question that on the Stockton e-bike share specifically?
Yeah, thanks. So it's a general question, just how that program, if it dealt with any adversity. A lot of the e-bike share programs are very successful, but they also have, they're prone to vandalism and theft, and that degrades the system. So I was just wondering, Stockton had those issues and how they got around those issues, and any other kind of lessons learned from implementing an e-bike share program.
It's a great question, and that was definitely one of the more challenging elements of that project. They dealt with some vandalism issues, which then led the sort of the team that was working on it to sort of change the bike providers midstream. So it was an ongoing challenge for sure. We have another bike sharing project that's been has had a little bit more smooth sailing, which is our e-bike lending library for our LA DOT grant. And the model there that's been quite successful is, instead of having a sort of e-bike sharing that's out on the street that anybody can use, they sort of rent out bikes sort of a month at a time to households, and they could sort of use those bikes to, run errands and do their sort of daily trips and store and maintain those bikes themselves. It's a program that's run out of a local bike shop also, and that's done a lot of sort of community engagement, and so perhaps there's this sort of known entity there in the community, and maybe there's more of a feeling of ownership of those bikes, and so that investment hasn't seen quite as many challenges around the vandalism element specifically. So for a future solicitation, we are sort of taking in those lessons from various projects, and then would sort of try to incorporate that into our scoring criteria and our selection of projects. But yeah, it's a good question, and I'm happy to follow up too if you want to get more details on the Stockton bike sharing specifically.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Definitely, we can follow up, and then also the e-bike lending library. You said it was in LA, so information on that too would be great. Thank you so much.
Sure. If I can jump in as well, Johanna Heyer from CARB. I'm the lead staff for the STEP program. I just wanted to mention also that the SJCOG program project just wrapped up a few months ago, and so they've produced a final report that has a lot of the details of the timeline, how much they spent on various things, how they dealt with the vandalism issues. And that report, we're working on getting that finalized. It should be posted to our STEP website shortly, so we can be sure to ask Heather to share that report with you once it gets posted as well. And same thing for LADOT, they will also have a final report. Yeah, we're happy to also work to connect you with some of those grantees directly, if that would be helpful.
Great, thank you.
Hi, Piet. I'd also add quickly that the Clean Mobility Equity Alliance does host a bike share working group that meets regularly with other bike share project implementers, and they share successes and lessons learned and contact information. So if you are interested in that group, I'm happy to get you connected offline, but just wanted to mention that as well for you.
Great, thanks.
All right, thanks, folks. Thanks for your questions, Piet. Okay. I do not see any other hands at this time. We do not have any emails. Still have some time, so we'll wait a moment to see if there's anybody else who wants to raise their hand. Never mind. Hold on. Carolyn Rodier, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, this is Caroline Rodier from UC Davis. I did just, unless I'm missing something, you mentioned a good to go bike sharing program. I mean, and that was, is that correct? Or was that a different type of program? But if that was a successful one, can you tell a little bit more about that program?
I'm not sure which staff that was, if that was something that Pedro was talking about. Oh, the video. Got it. In San Pedro. Got it. Is there somebody who can speak to that or connect with Caroline offline?
Hi, Caroline. Leilani here. I'm happy to connect with you offline and provide you some more details with that project. That was the project story video you're referring to, but can get you more details about that project after this meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Leilani. Thank you for your question, Caroline. Okay, we do have a comment/question from email. This is from Brian Hughes. I don't see the affiliation, but says, seems like a common theme on challenges is working with permitting and other regulatory entities. How much progress have you had with interagency coordination to break down those barriers, shorten project timelines, and reduce administrative costs? Well, that's a really big question. I don't know if, given that it applies to so many programs and projects, I don't know if there's any one person who would like to take a stab at this, but Pedro. Would you like to speak to this? There you are. I've unmuted you. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I'll give one example here. Others may have other examples, but the STEP team currently has a research project with the UC Irvine researchers that is looking at the impacts of programs like STEP that have these multiple investments that are complementary. So trying to understand how the sum is greater than or the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, in these types of approaches. And so we've worked closely when we were developing that, the scope of work, for example, with the Strategic Growth Council, because they have programs like the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities and Transformative Climate Communities that also fund these multiple complementary types of investments. And they've also faced challenges in trying to quantify the benefits of that approach. And so when we were developing our scope of work, we worked closely. We met with folks at SCC to develop that. So yeah, that's just one example of us working to make sure that our research doesn't just benefit our program, but that's something that can be used more broadly across other state funding programs.
And to clarify, Brian is he's the Vice President of Continuous Improvement, Plastic Express in Montgomery, Texas. Thank you, Pedro. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we take a break? Again, I would remind you, you will have opportunity at the end to ask questions again and make comments. So let's start a break, and we will return at 10:30. Thank you.
Back from break. We'll now transition to discuss future funding allocations for the clean mobility investments. Next slide, please. And we can go one more, please. Thank you. This slide was presented earlier this week in the funding plan kickoff workshop, and we're including it here to make sure we're all on the same page about the current state budget. The key takeaway here is that the current budget does not include an allocation for any of the mobility projects we've discussed today. That said, it's important to note that even though the state budget for general fund dollars has been passed, the legislature and the governor's office are still negotiating the final budget for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Also, the legislature has until the end of the legislative session on September 12th to pass bills that could amend the state budget by adding or removing funds that were previously appropriated. So while we're operating under the assumption that mobility projects will not receive funding in fiscal year 2025 to 26, we want to be ready should the state decide to allocate funding to these projects in the coming weeks and months. Next slide, please. This slide recaps the most recent funding allocations for the clean mobility investments. These allocations occurred in fiscal year 2023 to 24 and included $50 million for the mobility projects, including clean mobility options, clean mobility in schools, and the Sustainable Transportation Equity Project. This amount was evenly split between the three projects, such that each received a little over $16 million. CARB proposed that the remaining $10 million go to a new planning and capacity building project. Of this amount, 3/4, or $7.5 million, was designated for community-based planning grants. The remaining $2.5 million funded a planning and capacity building administrator. Next slide, please. Over the years, we've learned that there's far more demand for the clean mobility investments than what the state can provide. This slide focuses on clean mobility options, or CMO, the oldest of these projects. For context, the regional pilot grants ranged from $500,000 to $6 million each, and statewide CMO's needs assessments ranged from $50,000 up to $100,000 and up to $1.8 million each for the mobility project vouchers. When CMO launched in 2014 to 15, only 13% of project applications received funding. Even in 2016 to 17, after funding more than doubled, only about 25% of applications were awarded grants. Not shown on the slide is a third solicitation in 2018, which was specifically for the agricultural worker Van Pool's pilot project. That solicitation received and funded one application. In CMO's current iteration as the statewide voucher pilot, both funding windows 1 and 2 have been able to fund more projects, but demand continues to outpace the available funds, especially for mobility project vouchers. Next slide, please. The newer clean mobility investments projects have also been very competitive and oversubscribed in past funding rounds. For context, CMIS grants range from $5 million to $9 million each. STEP grants range from $3 million to $13 million each, and planning grants range from $100,000 up to $500,000 each. For example, in their first funding rounds, Clean Mobility in Schools and the Sustainable Transportation Equity Project were only able to fund 41% and 18% of applications, respectively. In 2023, these two programs released a joint competitive request for applications and were able to fund just 30% of them. Planning grants were first solicited in 2023, and only 36% of applications were able to be awarded grants. Next slide, please. Now that we've shared the background, we'd like to hear your input on how future funding should be allocated across the clean mobility projects, pending the final budget for fiscal year 2025 to 26. As mentioned earlier, it's still uncertain whether any funding will be available this year. However, the topic is still being discussed in current state budget negotiations, so we want to be ready in case funding becomes available. These are some specific questions we'd like to pose to all of you. First, we'd like to hear your thoughts on how funding should be allocated to the 4 projects. There are many possible ways to structure this. For example, in 2023 to 24, a sixth of total funding went to planning, and the remaining 5/6 was split evenly among the other 3 projects. If you think a different approach would be better this year if funding comes our way, we'd like to hear your suggestions and what factors CARB should consider when making these decisions. Another configuration might be to provide more funding for planning grants. If that's something you'd like to recommend, we'd also like to hear from you about that. Lastly, we'd like to learn if you have any other recommendations or discussion topic requests related to the funding allocations. With that, I'll pass it over to Robert to help facilitate comments and questions. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Leilani. Okay, folks. So, a reminder, go through the instructions again. If you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those of you using Zoom online, please click on the raise hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. If you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you're using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar, and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 to raise your hand, and we will call on you accordingly. If you would like to send a written comment or ask a question via email, please email us at cleantransportation@arb.ca.gov. The floor is open. Can we go back to the question slide, please? Thank you. Piet, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hi, yeah, I'm Piet Ken again from Ecology Action. Just in terms of the experience from the region that Ecology Action mainly focuses in on, the Monterey Bay region, Santa Cruz County, Monterey County, and San Benito County, it seems to be like the opportunities for planning grants are more numerous than implementation grants. And then a lot of planning work has been done from different sources to improve sustainable transportation with an equity focus. So, just in general, I would say that, getting money for planning grants is paramount, and obviously, more money the better, because as the slide showed, there's a lot more demand than there is supply. So whatever CARB can do to bring that money in to show these programs are working, in the communities that are underserved, would be great. But it seems like there's lots of great different mobility options out there and tools, and it's just the amount of having the finances to implement it. So that's my kind of general comment. So thanks.
And we thank you for that general comment. Thanks, Piet. Other comments or questions? Brian, I have unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Hey, yeah, this is Brian Hughes. So not kind of related to my other question or observation as a business, an executive in a business, but I do see around Southern California, it seems like big opportunity for the clean mobility in schools. The location that I live in, San Marcos, California, there's really only a handful of buses that even operate at my son's school and around the district, which that requires hundreds and hundreds of privately owned vehicles to take their kids to and from school every day. So it does seem like that should be a pretty big priority for the state, for statewide and for the districts to electrify their to build and electrify their busing. That's what I would say.
We thank you for your comment, Brian. Anyone else? We have no emails at this time. Okay, I do believe we'll have another opportunity for comments and questions. So please go ahead, Leilani.
Thank you, Robert. All right. We'd also like to share an update on a key part of the 2025 to 26 funding plan currently in development, the long-term plan for light-duty vehicles and clean mobility projects. This plan is CARB's long-term investment roadmap for clean transportation, covering both light-duty zero-emission vehicle incentives and the mobility projects. It will outline funding opportunities and estimate the investment needed over the next 3 years to grow California's zero-emission vehicle market and expand clean mobility solutions in communities. For mobility projects, the previous plan assessed funding gaps, project needs, and factors like scalability and sustainability. This year, we'll focus on what's needed to maintain current funding and identify what it would take to expand these efforts. We'll be sharing more details on this plan in our second work group. Next slide, please. And we'll now be moving on to our next steps. As part of the funding plan process this year, we plan to schedule one more public work group for the clean mobility investments. The second work group's tentative date has been updated to July 31st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. After the board approves the 2025 to 26 funding plan in November, we will hold public work groups that will focus on the implementation of projects. We hope that you will continue to engage with us through that process. Dates, times, and topics for these implementation work groups are still to be determined. Next slide, please. For our next work group, tentatively scheduled for July 31st from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., anticipated presentation topics include research contracts and evaluations, outcomes and policy recommendations for CARB, mobility projects feedback and improvements, technical assistance, collaboration and networking efforts, financial sustainability challenges and needs, the long-term plan, and the mobility marketing plan. Anticipated discussion and feedback topics include project-specific policy topics. We will now move on to our final Q&A session for open discussion. Next slide, please. And I'll pass it back to Robert.
Thank you, Leilani. Okay. I'm going to provide the instructions one more time. If you would like to make a verbal comment or ask a question, please raise your hand. For those using Zoom online, please click on the raise hand option on the Zoom navigation bar under the Participants tab. If you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar and then click on Raise Hand. For those using Zoom on a mobile application, please click on the Raise Hand option in the More tab. Again, if you are using an updated version of Zoom, you may need to click on the React or Reactions option on the Zoom navigation bar and then click on Raise Hand. For those who are participating by telephone, please be sure to press #2 and we will call on you accordingly. If you would like to provide a written written comment or question, you may email us at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov, which is shown on the slide as you see here. So the floor is now open again. Caroline, please go ahead.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. Oh, this is Caroline Rodier from UC Davis. So I really appreciated early on in your presentation, you were discussing car sharing and some of the barriers such as insurance. And I'm just wondering what efforts are. I have kind of two parts. What efforts are ongoing, to address the problem of insurance or other barriers to car sharing implementation and operation. Largely it's hard to get operators to serve communities. They're kind of dwindling in the state. And then the other question is around kind of what kind of considerations in the next round of funding. I know, for example, the CMO offers, I believe, top ups or, to keep the programs going on for a little while. And then I heard early on that a couple of the projects are ending. So I wondered if what CARB's thoughts are around that or, your interest in the topic. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Caroline. Abba?
Hi, Caroline. Yeah, thank you for your questions. I just want to cover a little bit about insurance. As we all know, it's a recurring theme among all the shared mobility services that we have funded. We do need more flexible insurance requirement. That what our thought is that probably the insurance that reflect fleet size, that's something that we're thinking about, like the higher coverage limits probably for larger fleets and reduced requirements for smaller fleet, which majority of our car share projects fall under. In the most updated version of the implementation manual, there are some changes that we try to negotiate with the Department of General Services that we get the insurance requirements from, by the way, to negotiate for some reduced general liability and auto liability. So yeah, we're just working with the program administrator team to gather these information from insurance brokers, some data, recent data. So the data that accurately reflects the actual risk of these projects, because we believe there are not much data available to go from. So this is about the insurance requirements. Efforts are underway in order to provide more flexibility and reduce insurance costs for car share projects and other micromobility and mobility option projects.
Thank you.
Yeah, Caroline, and I worked on our community car share for Sacramento, and talking to my colleague who also is staff on Blue LA, the toughest issue that we seem to encounter are the finding out tiered or floating rate structures to cover the costs of operations while also making it affordable for the people who we're trying to facilitate use for. And there's lots of really smart people in this space working on that, doing research on that, and it's a really challenging issue. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
you're very welcome. Thank you for your comment and question. Okay, do we have anybody else right now? Edgar, I am unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon or morning, sorry. Edgar Garibay with Value Improvement Projects, it's based in Stanislaus County. It's kind of a two-parter question, but it's really like I think in terms of maybe not providing a concise comment around like the funding mechanism, like the funding streams and how it should be distributed. I think maybe some questions to ask is if you would be able to repeat the names of the four programs I think it was mentioned. Um, you know, how many applications have you received for maybe each of those programs? What have you heard from community-based organizations or public agencies and whatnot in terms of like needs of those particular programs, academic institutions, etc. And then you know, just looking at the way that you could think about it, because you know you need the for some grants you may need the planning, right, in order to be able to do that. So is there a way to kind of like streamline those and saying maybe those that have applied and gone through this program may be eligible for certain programs that require a planning grant or require some sort of planning to kind of like move forward. So it could be an iterative approach. So hopefully it provides some feedback, but not necessarily like how the funding should be split. It may be a bigger discussion with some of those that have already been granted and then the general public, but those are just like some comments to kind of consider. But I guess just reiterating and just what I had mentioned briefly was just like if you could repeat the names of the four programs, and then maybe if you don't have it offhand or you do, like how many applications have you had, maybe just this funding round, this past funding round for some of those programs, that would be just helpful. And then the comment that I provided. Thank you.
Thanks, Edgar. Yeah, it covers a lot of stuff. We really appreciate the comment and the feedback. So perhaps you could look at some of the slides we presented that lay that out, and then to the extent that you have follow-up questions regarding more detail, more granular detail about those programs, it would be helpful for you to ask questions in email. And I believe, Edgar, you said Stanislaus County. Is that correct? What was your affiliation? Go ahead.
Valley Improvement Projects.
Valley Improvement Projects. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Edgar.
I just want to thank you for your comments, and just note that, you know, prioritizing projects and applications in general is such a complex work for us, because that's why we really need as much as feedback from communities and you know, stakeholders in academia. We want to support our existing projects that, you know, those that it can show measurable success. But we also don't want to focus and concentrate funding the same organization and communities. So, and we want to expand the geographic reach as much as possible. So I can tell you that what we are trying to do is developing measurable metrics to see, what projects, may struggling with, for example, long-term viability, but they're showing a strong community impact, or those that they need additional funding to scale up and replicate to new communities. And at the same time, we would love to expand the reach to new communities for new projects. Just want to mention that it's a very complicated topic to to think about, like how we need to split these funding among projects. But thank you again for your feedback.
Thank you, Ava. Very helpful. And again, Edgar, we would encourage the follow-up email so we can provide you more granular data in response to your questions. Are there anybody else? Is there anybody else? Piet, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks. So my question had to deal with the general kind of insight, if you could provide more on the potential for funding to come in for CARB's equity-based sustainable programs, suite of programs in this fiscal year. So is my understanding that the fiscal year runs from July 1st through the end of June, in 2026. So, if, the stars aligned and CARB was able to get more money, get some money from the state in this current year budget or upcoming budget, like what would be the process for those funds to be, allocated to CARB, and then, what call for projects would CARB, be able to administer? I guess there's different scenarios, but any kind of insight that, CARB staff could provide to give us a glimpse of what might be possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Piet. Yeah, we understand the question. We can't really speculate on what might happen. And yes, the fiscal year that you were just asking about, that is correct. It starts July 1st and goes through June 30th of next year. So the budget that we're working on right now would be for the fiscal year that starts July 1st. And just to clarify, when we're talking about the budget, if things were added later, oftentimes they are prescribed in those bills for specific programs, and then but we can't speculate on what may or may not happen at this time in terms of that. So, but yes, we have a process to determine how to allocate, but we can make no predictions at this time about what might happen later on in the legislative session. Sorry.
Okay.
And just jumping in, Piet, to your point about if funding was available, the implementation work group meetings that were mentioned earlier would be kind of our process to collect feedback on how funding available would be distributed, and kind of meetings like these, getting feedback from you all.
Great, thank you. So the idea is that, CARB can't predict the future, but wants to be ready if there are, circumstances that would be funding for the 25-26 fiscal year.
Well, yeah, we're always listening to your feedback, right? And so that's the point of what we're talking about right now, in addition to other things. But yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else at this time? Oh. Edgar, I've unmuted you. Please go ahead.
Thanks, Robert. Edgar Garavagan with Valley Improvement Project, Stanislaus County. I just wanted to respond. What I was just saying is just to clarify. Sorry, to clarify was just that the comments that I made were just like considerations to be taken, not necessarily that I was looking for like specifics. I was just providing some things to consider as you're looking at these programs and understanding that, could completely understand about what one of your colleagues just mentioned about the, looking at when you're looking at applications, which you have to look at, and those things. I was just more saying it, just clarifying that those were just kind of points to consider around when you're looking at the splitting, or sorry, asking about how the funding should be distributed, and looking at feedback from us that are participating in this work group, was just to look at, just like the historically what has been, and looking at if as you're going through this, if there are some of those that have particularly applied before to a program, if they would fit into another program as an applicant, not necessarily that they would be funded. But I understand the process of applications is very arduous, because everybody takes their time, and it's a very hard process. I was just saying, just to look at some things to consider, and if some of those grants that require planning and they've gone through the program, to be considered for certain buckets, not necessarily that they need to be funded, but just as a general sense, just like a general considerations for those comments. So it wasn't necessarily to follow up, but just looking at those that have been funded, and if they were to move forward, and then looking at the allocation and distribution in different parts of the state, which you already do. But there were just some general comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Edgar. Loud and clear.
Yeah,
Ava.
thanks, Edgar, again. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that that's exactly how we've tried to do in the past. For example, for Clean Mobility Options Program, we had a set aside funding specifically for those applicants that they have done community transportation needs assessment in the past. So they had their own bucket of funding, as you just mentioned. And I believe for other programs, those that they have done planning grants previously, they had some sort of priority to be chosen. So again, thank you for your feedback.
I'd also like to add that one of the purposes of planning and capacity building is really to uplift communities that haven't received funding in the past. So I think that's why it is one of our priorities, so that we can get more communities involved in these transportation planning efforts. But we also wanted to make it a distinct category so that we were mindful that we have sort of routes to funding. We have pathways to funding that CARB, with the CMO, STEP, and Clean Mobility in Schools. But there could be other opportunities that we can connect communities to that make more sense based on how their planning effort is unfolding. So we're mindful that CMO, STEP, and CMIS is one pathway, but we wanted to make sure there's dedicated resources to acknowledge that there could be other funding opportunities that we could help prepare them for. So I just wanted to make that known, that our goal is to prepare communities in a more, holistic way, if that makes sense.
Thank you very much, Violet. Appreciate that. Hope that was helpful, Edgar. Okay. Anyone else? Do we have anything in the email at this time? No emails. I see no raised hands at this time. Do you want to give people a little bit of time and space here? Okay, folks. So I want to just remind you that if you have questions or comments later on, please feel free to email us at cleantransportationincentives@arb.ca.gov. So we're going to wrap up this Q&A now, and thank you very much for all of your comments and questions. I'll pass it off to Leilani.
Thank you, Robert. And thank you all for joining us today. And can I get the next slide, please? Thank you. I want to remind you of our open door policy, especially for those most affected by our mobility projects. We encourage you to contact us for one-on-one discussions about your needs, concerns, and potential solutions. A link will be shared in the chat as well as the team's email. If you'd like to contact a specific project lead for a mobility project, you can also find their email on the slide. We appreciate your engagement with us in the funding plan process, and we look forward to collaborating with you this year. To stay up to date, please subscribe to our listserv, and the link will also be provided in the chat. It's been a pleasure to facilitate today's meeting, and have a great day.